This is Power Hour with Gabriella Power.
Hello and welcome to Power Hour. I'm Gabriella Power. Thank you so much for joining us. Coming up, the fallout from the Super Bowl halftime show, why millions switched off and instead went to Turning Point USA's show. Also, the search for Nancy Guthrie continues. Savannah Guthrie making another desperate plea for the public to help. And King Charles says that he will support police in their investigation into his brother Andrew Mountbatten Windsor over links with Jeffrey Epstein. But first, we have to talk about Kamala Harris. She's back. She teased a major announcement and it has been revealed, wait for it, another social media account, just what we've been crying out for. Here she is.
Madam Vice President, what's going on with Kamala HQ?
Well, I'm so glad you asked. I have good news. So Kamala HQ is turning into headquarters, and it's where you can go online to get basically the latest of what's going on, and also to meet and revisit with some of our great, courageous leaders.
Kamala has posted on what was Kamala HQ, where she delivered what she believes is a very important message, that after all this time of reflection since losing the election, she has figured out the source of our problems, and that is the far right. Yes, she says that, I know this past year has not been easy for any of us. In that time, I have taken stock of the state of our nation. Here is what I have concluded. The far right has a 24/7 outrage machine online. They are casting Donald Trump as an agent of change, yet he has delivered nothing but empty promises for the American people. She goes on to complain about not just Donald Trump, but the people who voted for him. She says, but Donald Trump is not the only source of our problems. We must also look at the rise of the MAGA movement. It's not exactly a new thing, but she is right that the MAGA movement has never been stronger. Here's CNN admitting that MAGA is growing and growing.
Donald Trump, it's about the Make America movement. Again, that's what we're talking about, Make America Great Again movement, and it is as powerful as it has ever been, because I want you to take a look here. GOP who view MAGA favorably. 2 years ago when Donald Trump was running for term number 2, it was 74%. Today, look at this. It's 78% of Republicans who view the Make America Great Again movement favorably. So we're talking about something that, in my opinion, will very much be able to outlast Donald Trump. Trump is in term number 2. He can't run for a term number 3. But the bottom line is this. What he brought into the GOP looks like it's going to last long beyond him.
Well, there you go. Well, Kamala Harris goes on to say in her post that the Democrats must improve the way they communicate with Americans, including with Gen Z voters. She writes, that is why I've decided to revive my team's social media operation, Kamala HQ. It will now be known as Headquarters. Wow, what a rebrand, with the X handle being headquarters_67, which even left-wing media outlet CNN is labeling as cringe.
By the way, the handle they're using, you can see there, we're zooming in on it, at headquarters_67. 67, as the kids used to say. Well, you know, used to say a lot of things. And I think they also used to say, that's probably cringe.
I mean, what a disaster. Even CNN and MS Now, formerly known as MSNBC, are not getting around this. Almost immediately, this handle has been changed again. HQ News Now is what it's called. It just tells you exactly how much of a flop this is, and it's how her team and Kamala, well, they're right now scrambling. They are all over the place. But what else does Kamala Harris have to say on this new social media account? Well, she says, I'm so proud of the campaign we built in 2024 and of the ways Kamala HQ innovated online and brought new young voters into the conversation. But let me be clear, our movement has always been bigger than one candidate. We must be where the people are, and these platforms help ensure our voices stay loud and our fight continues. I mean, that is essentially it. That is the big announcement that she has been teasing. And that's a strategy that is just bound to win over young voters by slamming the majority of Americans who voted for Donald Trump, including a lot of young Americans, blaming all of our problems on the so-called far right and admitting that the Democrats just suck at messaging. Well, she certainly proved that. That is it. I mean, how long has it been since the election? 15 months? And this is what we get from Kamala Harris. She is delusional, so is her team. It is, of course, another sign that she is getting ready to run again. So get ready for more Substack posts and more word salads and more inspiring advice like this.
You know, we have to stay woke. Like, everybody needs to be woke. and you can talk about if you're the wokest or woker, but just stay more woke than less woke. Yeah.
No thanks. And just one more point. This clip of Kamala Harris has resurfaced. It is going viral, showing her position against voter ID. Although the majority of Americans support voter ID, more than 70% of them, here is Kamala Harris making the strong case against it.
Is agreeing to voter ID one of those compromises that you'd support?
I don't think that we should underestimate what that could mean. Because in some people's mind, that means, well, you're going to have to Xerox or photocopy your ID to send it in to prove you are who you are. Well, there are a whole lot of people, especially people who live in rural communities, who don't. There's no Kinko's, there's no Office Max near them. People have to understand that when we're talking about voter ID laws, be clear about who you have in mind and what would be required of them to prove who they are. Of course, people have to prove who they are, but not in a way that makes it almost impossible for them to prove who they are.
If you watch my reporting, you know I cover protests, political theatre and media meltdowns, and what always strikes me is how disconnected the slogans are from real life. While activists shout ideology, ordinary people face rising prices, higher taxes and governments determined to make everything harder. We're told to trust the experts, trust media narratives and trust that massive spending and endless debt will make us better off. But history and common sense say otherwise. When leadership is weak and policy reckless, everyday people pay the price. That's why I believe in owning something real, physical gold and silver from American Hartford Gold, tangible assets that hold value through inflation and instability. With thousands of 5-star reviews, they deliver gold and silver to your door or store securely in a tax-advantaged gold IRA. And right now, when you call and mention that I sent you, you could get up to $20,000 in free silver with your first purchase. Call 855-802-5199 or text POWER to 65532. That's 855-802-5199 or text POWER to 65532 or click the link in the video description, because when politics turns into performance and the media loses the plot, it's worth protecting something that actually holds up in the chaos and outlasts all the trends. Joining us now is the Daily Telegraph National Affairs editor and the host of the US Report here on Sky News Australia, James Morrow. James, great to see you.
Great to be here.
Let's talk with Kamala Harris, our favourite person after teasing this mystery announcement. Former Vice President Kamala Harris announced a rebrand of her social media account. So what was Kamala HQ is now been renamed to Headquarters. Even CNN and MS Now, formerly MSNBC, are saying that this sucks, that she could really be doing a lot better. I mean, what a disaster.
Well, it's a disaster, but, you know, we all know what's happening here. I mean, there's the old saying that ambitious and stupid is no way to go through life, but it's a great way to go through politics. And I think that pretty much sums up Kamala Harris right now. She actually thinks, I'm not kidding here, she actually thinks that she has a shot to be able to go and be the nominee again in 2028.
Absolutely.
And all this is, the only reason why this is because she's got name recognition from the last time around. There's no other Democrats who have major name recognition, possibly with the exception of Gavin Newsom from California. So she goes to the top of the name recognition polls. She thinks she's got this massive groundswell of support. She thinks she's not going to have to fight Trump in 2028. She's doing the Kamala Harris thing. This is how lame it is. This is how lame it is, all right? The original Twitter handle for the thing was Kamala HQ 67. Like they were actually trying to do that whole thing.
Yeah.
Everybody, as you said, CNN looked at this.
CNN called it cringe.
Oh my God, this is so lame. This is so cringe. You know, all the Gen Zs and millennials are going, you are the crazy aunt with the handbag that kind of rattles when you walk around with it, if you know what I'm saying. There's no way this goes anywhere. Personally, I think it's great. I would love to see this keep rolling
More content?
on. More content, more word salads. So much fun.
But it's just amazing to see that after 15 months, really, after all this time, this is what she's come up with. This is like the strategy to win over young voters. She's clearly got people around her saying, run again, run again. And so, you know, she's trying to take a shot.
What else is she going to do? I mean, what else is she going to do? Nobody wants to read her book. You know, she doesn't have any sort of deep policy thoughts. You want her on your corporate board. She's got nothing. So she's going to have to do this.
Yeah, it's interesting looking at that social media strategy. And you mentioned Gavin Newsom looking at his strategy as well. They're just so desperate to copy Donald Trump because obviously Donald Trump really cuts through. I mean, he's been communicating with voters directly for a very long time.
Yeah, I mean, and Newsom tries to do the whole thing where he takes the proverbial out of Trump in the same way that Trump does it with great talent. Whether you love or hate his politics, he's such a good, there's a blank posting kind of thing that he does. But Gavin, it doesn't land.
No,
it doesn't
I agree.
land. But he's still trying to be the kind of the de facto leader of the opposition. You saw this last week when the New York Times, and I think it was Vogue, came out with these massive, huge puff pieces on him. But
they called him handsome.
They called him handsome. Oh, look at his silvery hair.
gosh.
So look at the crease in those trousers. I haven't seen anything like this since Obama, but Gavin Newsom has this whole record of California behind him, and that whole record is a disaster.
Absolute disaster. No, and also with Gavin Newsom's social media strategy, it's not authentic, at least with Donald Trump. You know that it is. I want to get your thoughts on the Super Bowl, particularly this halftime show. And I just wonder, James, why millions and millions of people switched off. Here's just part of Bad Bunny's performance.
God bless America. Sea Chile, Argentina, Uruguay, Paraguay, Bolivia, Peru, Ecuador, Brazil.
Wow, it really just screams Americana, right?
Wholesome, yeah. No.
Yeah, well, let's take a look at Turning Point USA's rival event. See if there's any difference.
Until you can.
And it gives me chills every time I look at that.
Yeah, but, you know, the whole thing with that whole Bad Bunny act, you know, I'd never heard of this guy beforehand. I don't know, a lot of people had. He's this sort of, they call him Latin Trap. The king of Latin Trap. I don't know what those words mean all put together. The whole thing was a completely political statement, even though they tried not to be, say, it was political. Like the fact that God bless America, and then Chile and Argentina, and so on and so forth. This was about asserting a Latin American dominance. This was about this sort of third world mindset. This was about sticking it to Trump, to white America, all these sorts of icons that this guy is all about tearing down. It was a terrible choice of halftime show. Why does the NFL keep picking this sort of thing? Why do they keep going woke? Why do they keep doing the take the knee stuff, the Black Lives Matter stuff? You know, the fact of the matter is, though, Americans I spoke to about this said nobody watches the halftime show. Nobody. They're all off going to the bathroom. They've had a lot of beer. They're getting the buffalo wings ready for the next, half of the game. They're getting the dips and everything. It's like nobody pays attention.
I like Matt Walsh's post on X. He wrote, having the halftime show of your biggest game of the year in a language almost none of your lifelong fans can understand, while waving the flags of countries that none of them are from, is the biggest FU that I've ever seen a corporation give to its own consumers. Look, I think a lot of Americans would probably agree with a part of what Matt has to say there. And looking at, you know, what people think of the halftime show and also Turning Point USA's rival show, TMZ had a poll on social media after Sunday's game about who had the better show. Kid Rock was on 64.7%, Bad Bunny on 35.3%. So
and TMZ is really, really woke. So like that tells you something.
Doesn't it? Yeah. OK, let's talk about what's happening here in Australia. Of course, the latest poll shows even more support for One Nation. Absolute disaster for the Libs, the coalition's primary vote plunging to 18%, almost minor party status, I should say. Susan Lee is, of course, the most unpopular major party leader in 23 years. This is according to the poll in The Australian. And as I mentioned, One Nation voter support is up again to 27%. So, James, Angus Taylor could be Liberal leader by the end of the week. I'm pretty bored of this. I think a lot of Australians are. Yeah,
look, I mean, and Brendan Nelson right now probably has a real spring in his step when he goes out to walk the dog in the morning here, given these poll numbers about least popular opposition leaders. Look, Susan Ley, the Liberals have had 9 months to sort something out here. They have wasted every single day God has given them since the election. I went back yesterday and I looked at what I wrote late on election night and published late on election night. Basically said, they have to get their act together or it's terminal. It really does start to look like it's terminal right now for the Liberal Party if they can't, number one, change their leader. Now, here's the thing. Bring in Angus. Well, how many deals has he made with moderates? So what sort of policies are they going to get? The thing is, they don't have any policies. No. They don't have an energy policy. They don't have an immigration policy. Wild. This is why everybody is going to One Nation.
Absolutely.
Everybody's going to One Nation because they're like, these are the things we care about. And I cannot believe that the Liberals might actually do the same insane thing they do every 3 years. Which is, hey, let's wait till 6 weeks before the election and then throw a bunch of crap at the wall and see what sticks. No, it's not going to work.
No, I think so much damage has really been done. It's disastrous, and it's really so easy to get a sense of what Australians are wanting right now. And absolute immigration is really such a key issue.
Well, here's the thing. You know, look at the rise of Pauline Hanson in the late 1990s. And what did John Howard do? He heard all of the concerns about immigration. He took them on board. He absorbed those into the Liberal Party platform and the coalition. He went in to have, you know, the second longest serving Prime Minister in Australian history. It was a great success. Now the Liberals say, oh, we don't want to be any way associated with Pauline Hanson. Oh, it's too Trumpy if we start talking about immigration cuts. Of course, it all means that what's happening really is that they're all in the pockets of Universities Australia and property developers and everybody else who wants, you know, lots more migrants and cheap labor. It's a road to failure.
Let's talk about Japan.
Sure.
Obviously, Sanae Takaichi has won the snap election in what's being dubbed as a landslide victory, and she won on running on policies such as
immigration. And who knew that immigration was an issue in Japan? But apparently it is, because they've got their population problems that we all do, and they had started to bring in migrants from India and from the developing world, and it has really not gone well at all. And Japan, unlike Australia, which says, oh, no, we must, you know, be all multiculturally welcoming, says, no, we're Japanese. And they voted Takaichi back in. She's now got more than 2/3 of the vote. They can actually change the Constitution, so they can actually take a much more aggressive forward posture on defense. You know, when General MacArthur and everybody wrote the Constitution for Japan and said, you know, you can only have like a little peacekeeping force and that's it, they never thought that this would happen. And now today, 80 years later, we're thinking, actually, yeah, please go change the Constitution because we need your help up there in the North Pacific. And it's fantastic. But here's the thing. It's like, are there any lessons for the coalition here? This politician just won a huge, resounding mandate on the basis of cutting immigration and getting tough on defense. But, you know what, Gabriella, I just don't think there are any lessons our centre-right party can take it. This, so forget about that. What does that matter to Australia?
No lessons at all,
Yeah.
James. No, too funny. Look, finally, before I let you go, of course, Israel's President Isaac Herzog is here in Australia. Yesterday, we saw him meet with families of some of the victims of the Bondi terror attack. He laid a wreath and 2 stones from Jerusalem to honour the 15 victims. Of course, though, we saw these pro-Palestine activists pushing ahead with this rally. Very shameful.
Shameful. They were given, just so everybody watching who maybe wasn't here in Sydney, knows what happens. These protesters were given a space in Hyde Park. They were told, you can go have your protest here. They said, no, we want to have it on the steps of Town Hall. They went to the Supreme Court. They lost. They still held their protest. All they wanted to do was provoke confrontation with the police. They got what they wanted for, unfortunately, and because the police are in this invidious position. If they don't go hard enough, you wind up with an October 9th type of situation, like the Opera House. At the same time, there was also a huge memorial event going on down at the Convention Center with President Herzog. If those groups had met, you would have had a disaster.
Yeah.
You go too hard and, police brutality, this was a horrible police violence, pepper spray, punches, all of this sort of stuff. But all of the footage I have seen, or much of the footage I have seen, really suggests that these protesters were looking for trouble, and trouble is what they got.
Of course, absolutely. I mean, the fact that these people were taking to the streets when the President of Israel is here to mourn the victims of this terror attack.
And here's the thing, so much of what they were talking about is this whole idea of globalizing the intifada.
No.
The key thing here about what that means, that doesn't just mean you're against Israel and you're bringing the fight against Israel to other places. They consider every so-called settler colonial state to be illegitimate. That includes Australia, okay? So what this is, when they say globalize the intifada, this is not just about an attack on the state of Israel or Jewish Australians or Jews around the world. This is also an assault against the West. Everybody needs to understand that this is why this matters so much, and it's so existential, and it's driven largely, I have to say, by children of the elite who have come out of universities with their heads pumped so full of garbage and so full of hate, and the best thing that they can do now is scurry out of their Newtown share houses to brawl with the cops.
Yeah.
It's a disgrace.
James, it absolutely is. Well said. Thank you so much for joining us.
Anytime.
Really appreciate it. Look, every country has its healthcare problems, but America's Medicare system is on another level. Millions of seniors end up on the wrong plan every year. They either overpay, lose access to their doctors, or both, not because they did anything wrong, but because the system is designed to confuse them. And it gets worse. A lot of Medicare advisors are really just salespeople pushing whichever plan pays them the biggest commission. That's why I want to tell all of my American Power Hour viewers about Chapter. Chapter doesn't work for big insurance or the government. They're independent. In fact, they are the only advisor that compares every Medicare plan nationwide to find one that actually fits your needs. On average, that saves people about $1,100 a year. Just have a read of the testimonials. One woman, Jill, said that Chapter showed her better options that didn't even appear on the Medicare.gov website. That is how broken the system is and how valuable it is to have someone truly on your side. So if you're looking for Medicare guidance, don't go it alone. Call the number below to speak with Chapter and get clear, unbiased guidance on your Medicare options. Now let's turn to the story that's gripping America, the search for Nancy Guthrie, the mother of NBC Today show host Savannah Guthrie. Nancy Guthrie disappeared from her home in Arizona 9 days ago. Authorities believe that she was taken against her will. Savannah Guthrie has issued another desperate plea for help.
We believe our mom is still out there. We need your help. Law enforcement is working tirelessly around the clock trying to bring her home, trying to find her. She was taken and we don't know where. No matter where you are, even if you're far from Tucson, if you see anything, if you hear anything, if there's anything at all that seems strange to you, that you report to law enforcement.
Joining us for more on this is our panel, Josh Hammer, Senior Editor at Large at Newsweek, and Alex Tarasio, Signal Principal and Pollster. Thank you both for joining us. Of course, our thoughts and prayers are with Savannah. All of the Guthries are praying that Savannah's mother is found and that she's in okay condition. But Josh, authorities are really racing against the clock here.
Yeah, it's been going on for a long time. And look, we obviously are all praying. We are hoping for the best. But look, I mean, happy endings at this point in the story oftentimes only happen in Hollywood, right? And again, we're all hoping and praying for the best news here. But it's entirely possible this is not going to end the way that Americans and the rest of the world, for that matter, really hope that it is going to end. Now, the one thing, Gabrielle, that I will say has been kind of my takeaway throughout this really just deeply terrible story is it's been amazing to watch Americans of all stripes unite around this. And I say that because the timing of that is quite interesting, actually. We just had this highly divisive Super Bowl halftime show, Bad Bunny, the very anti-Trump Spanish-speaking musician who really alienated a lot of people there, the NFL, and Roger Goodell, the commissioner, and him there. We have American athletes overseas in Italy and Milan Cortina as part of our Olympic delegation right now at the Winter Olympic Games, who are trashing the administration there. So America's actually very divided in many ways when it comes to entertainment, when it comes to sports, things like that. To say nothing of Donald Trump and immigration, of course, themselves. But the country's really been able to unite and rally around this particular story. It's something of a sordid reminder that all too often it takes deep, profound human tragedy in order to make Americans unite around something, or frankly, just all human beings that matters. It's been very much a recurring theme throughout human history. So maybe I'm naive, Gabriella, but my hope is that perhaps we can learn a thing or two from this and be a little more ready, willing, able, perhaps even eager to make common cause and unite when there's something less tragic happening in the future.
Alex, are you seeing that as well? Really, the country united over this, all hoping for the best outcome?
I think that the country is united in horror of this. It's such a strange story, and kidnappings don't happen all that often. They're unusual in the United States. Ransoms don't happen all that often. And so when it happens to somebody who's such a high-profile figure that people know, they're in their homes every night. There's millions of people for whom this is like it happening to their friend. And there is a great deal of interest in this, a great deal of hope that Nancy Guthrie is returned alive and intact. And so I see Donald Trump, uncharacteristically coming in and offering only support, only help, only resources, nothing else. That's exactly what people want to see from a president. But this really isn't about him. This is about a moment of grief and something that we hope never happens to anybody. But it's also the kind of thing that freaks people out and gets people to be more scared. And so I do hope she comes home. Hopefully we can have a happy ending on this one.
Let's talk about the economy. A new Gallup poll found that more Americans believe the economy and stock market will improve over the next 6 months. This poll found that 50% say that the stock market will be going up, 25% expect it to fall, 17% think that it will stay the same. On economic growth, 49% expect an increase, 36% predict a decline. Alex, what do you make of this poll? What do you put this down to?
So this is one of several poll results that say kind of the same thing that I have noted over the past week and a half, 2 weeks. They all ask slightly different questions because the economy is irredeemably politicized. And when you ask people if they approve of the economy, then that tracks really tightly with their approval of the president. And so where you can see improvements is where you have a trend. And this was one of those polls where you have a trend in more people saying now compared to a few months ago that the economy is improving or that they expect things to get better. They expect their own situation to improve. We have seen that in our own polling at Signal. I've seen that in several other sources. And so what that tells me is that the affordability messaging that the White House is doing is, I think, working. The plans that the White House has put into place through the One Big Beautiful Bill and through the entire economic plan that he has instituted since coming in, I think it is starting to work and that Americans are starting to feel it. It happens slowly. The economy is like an aircraft carrier. It takes a really long time to turn, but the momentum is definitely in the right direction just based on the number of signals that are moving the right way.
Yeah, Josh, what do you make of this? I think it certainly shows confidence, but is that going to be enough to help Republicans in the midterms?
So, Gabrielle, this is a huge switch, actually, from as recently as 2 months ago. So Alex, not me, is the polling guru here on this panel. But if memory serves, it was early December that I saw a poll from a group that I never heard of called American Research Group. I don't really know how reputable they are. I've never heard of them. But I remember seeing this poll, and it was basically an "Are you better off or are you worse off than 1 year ago?" style question. And according to that poll, about 2 months ago, early December, 65% of Americans said that they were worse off financially than 1 year ago. Only 7% actually said that they were better off. And then there was a healthy chunk that said that there was no discernible difference there. Now, admittedly, that poll is talking about the past. This is a prospective poll talking about the future. But still, I mean, pessimism versus optimism, that's a really, really big switch. And these are just one polls there. But as Alex says, it actually is part of a broader trend. So I agree that what the White House is saying right now and how they're messaging, it seems to be working, and I can't necessarily pinpoint one thing, right? I can't necessarily say that this was the sent testimony from Secretary Scott Bessent that necessarily overcame the mainstream media disinformation hoax, or this was the statement, or this was the data there. I think it's kind of just the death by 1,000 cuts of really what has been this corporate media disinformation hoax. I mean, the notion that affordability has been a grave, grave crisis in the Trump administration, especially relative to the baseline of the Biden economy that he inherited, is frankly, it's a farcical notion. I mean, gas prices are at least 5-year lows. Oftentimes, in some states, are actually even lower than that. 4.4% is the most recent quarterly GDP number that we have. Inflation overall hovering around 2.6, 2.7%. That's still higher on a month-over-month basis than it should be. The Federal Reserve targets 2%, but it's manageable. It's not particularly crazy there. So whatever the administration is doing, again, I can't pinpoint to like one data point there, but the trend is definitely a positive direction. Right now, they kind of just need to keep it up because if there is one thing that can stave off what still looks like a fairly daunting and intimidating midterm elections for the GOP this fall, it would be, I think, continued success on the economic front.
Let's talk about the Super Bowl. The halftime show is being slammed. A lot of people didn't want to see Bad Bunny, especially after his political grandstanding at the Grammys. And here's what WWE wrestler Logan Paul said when asked if he was excited about the show.
Logan, are you excited for the halftime show? No.
He was not the only one who didn't want to watch Bad Bunny's performance. Millions of people switched off and turned into Turning Point USA's rival show. Josh, this was no surprise to me.
Yeah, Gabrielle, I flipped back and forth a little bit. I ultimately ended up watching the Bad Bunny thing, and then ended up watching the Turning Point alternative show after it was over. I wanted to make sure I watched both. Frankly, I would have skipped the Bad Bunny thing, but I need to know, frankly, what was said for purposes of my day-to-day job, which is that of a political commentator. And it was an atrocity. I mean, it's really not performative outrage on my behalf and many others' behalf. I was really, really angry watching that because this is the Super Bowl. This is America's #1 marquee sporting event. I'm a lifelong sports fan, Gabrielle. I almost work in professional sports. I love professional sports. The Super Bowl is it. I mean, it is the granddaddy of all American sporting events there. It is a global, iconic event there. Supposed to represent American athletic competition and American sporting excellence, American exceptionalism on the world stage there. And we couldn't even do it in our language, in the language that we speak. I mean, it was such a massive insult. It was a massive insult to large swaths, at least a plurality, probably a majority of the NFL's actual fan base there. And then to kind of add insult to injury, you had Green Day, which is a notoriously ideologically left-wing punk rock band whose heyday was like 2.5, 3 decades ago. They kicked off the festivities before it all started there. Then you had the Black National Anthem. I mean, what was this? I mean, why is there a Black National Anthem? Well, last I checked, the Star Spangled Banner was national anthem for all of us. So the whole thing, frankly, from soup to nuts, was just deeply alienating and discomforting. And look, I mean, I tuned in, as I said, to the Turning Point alternative event after it was over. I'm a big country music fan. I saw Lee Brice in concert actually for the first time like 12 or 13 years ago when he was a nobody. So it was fun to see him now playing in this alternative halftime show there. I enjoyed it. Hopefully the NFL learns from this. I suspect they probably won't, unfortunately, because Jay-Z is still calling the halftime shows. I think he's on a contract for a few more years. They probably won't learn anything whatsoever there, but it's hard to imagine it getting a lot worse than this.
It's extraordinary. I mean, even from where I'm sitting in Australia, tuning in to watch it, that's really not the classic Americana themes that you would expect to get from an NFL game. Alex, what were your thoughts watching it? And of course, I'm sure you're not surprised to see more than 5 million people turning into Turning Point USA's rival show.
I'm not surprised, and I think that Josh is probably a little more optimistic than I am about the NFL's likelihood of improving in the future. I was one of these people that turned off the halftime show. I didn't have any interest in seeing it, but I don't want to overstate that phenomenon. The Super Bowl, as Josh rightly noted, is far and away the most watched event in American life, and not just sporting event, just the most watched event. There's about 130 million people who probably tuned in last night, and that is on par for a non-sporting event, just for reference, with the moon landing in 1969. There's simply nothing else out there, not even close, that gets so many Americans all looking at the same thing at the same time. And so that's why I think the people get sick of having politics shoved in their face. You know, the three of us here on this panel are probably a little weird, but most people just want to tune out sometimes and just watch football. And to have these halftime shows, and it's not just this one, it's every year, focus on getting politics back in a place where it doesn't have to be, that is something people don't like. And we had a poll result that's going to come out in probably 2 days, where we asked, does the mainstream media reflect views of people like you? And 65% of Americans said no. And so last night, when they see something like that, that's what they're talking about. They want to watch the football, they want to watch game and fun commercials. They don't want to watch more politics.
No, absolutely not. Look, President Trump says that he wants to see America become more faithful than it has ever been before. Let's take a listen.
We are going to do something that everyone said, like, that's tough. We're going to rededicate America as one nation under God. You know, a lot of people...
You can hear that applause pretty loudly there. He says religion is essential for a great nation, noting the boost we've seen in church attendance, and he said that there has to be a reason for why we're here.
And I've always said, you just can't have a great country if you don't have religion. You have to believe in something. You have to believe that what we're doing, there's a reason for it. There has to be a reason for it. We're all working and we're behaving. I mean, I behave because I'm afraid not to, okay? Because I don't want to get in trouble.
He makes everyone laugh, doesn't he? Alex, many signs at the moment that religion is really making a comeback. A lot of people returning to church, certainly after Charlie Kirk's death.
There are a lot of signs of that. And so for many years, religious attendance and identification with Americans being Christian primarily has been falling. That has recently started to reverse. And you know, when I see something like this, I anticipate the reaction, the backlash, because that's what I grew up with 20 years ago. But we've had 20 years of going in the wrong direction, in the other direction, of getting religion more and more out of public life in every possible way. Meanwhile, we have this other civic religion, where on the Democratic side, during the Biden administration, we worship trans people. We make room for every other religion in society, but not what Trump said at that breakfast. I think it's great. I think that we need more of these things. There's a little bit more humility from the president, from the country. That can only be a good thing. And we're just a long way off from the country that we were even in the Bush years. And so it was rather refreshing to hear this.
Yeah, Josh, what are your thoughts on what the president had to say? And are you seeing that from where you are, more and more people heading back to church?
Yeah, this is a wonderful message from Donald Trump. This is very much sentiment that I've been preaching in my own capacity as an adult, as a commentator for literally decades now. Shades of George Washington's farewell address, actually. George Washington, in his farewell address in 1796, famously says, I'm paraphrasing here, it's a very close paraphrase, he says that there is nothing other than revealed religion itself, which is the indispensable safeguard of morality from one generation to the next. He's not talking here about this kind of ethereal, amorphous notion of spiritual but not religious. He's talking about actual, revealed, biblical religion. And that's what Donald Trump's talking about as well at this prayer breakfast there. Donald Trump has been the greatest friend in modern presidential history, arguably the greatest friend in all of American history, to people of faith there. He comes from a historically not particularly religious background. I don't pretend to know what his current worship habits are or whatever there, but he certainly says and does all of the right ththings when it comes to this matter there. There absolutely has been a surge, to Alex's point, in Americans who are returning to their faith there. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing. Look, it's the first liberty enshrined in the Bill of Rights. The very first two clauses of the very first round of the Constitution are the Establishment Clause and the Free Exercise Clause, which are our two religious liberty provisions there. This is the bread and butter of what it means to be an American. We're coming up here this summer on the 250th anniversary of America's Declaration of Independence there, really the symbolic beginnings of the country there. There certainly could be a worse time to recommit to our nation's founding principles than this. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing. I commend Donald Trump for saying and doing it.
I want to talk about The View before I let you both go. The Federal Communications Commission, the FCC, has launched an investigation into the ABC's The View amid the agency's crackdown on equal time for political candidates. A source told Fox News Digital that the fake news is not getting a free pass anymore. Alex, I think the fake news is still getting a free pass when I look at a lot of what is still getting put out there on mainstream media. What do you make of this?
There are so many rules that the left doesn't think that it needs to follow. And I say the left and the media in this case in really one breath. The network news, like ABC, they have to abide by certain rules. Those rules are that you give candidates equal time. If you don't, then you're effectively allowing the use of government resources, the networks, to be used to advance one political candidate, and government should not do that. That tends to just get ignored so much of the time. And so we have an FCC that's not doing that, and they now need to give equal time, if depending on how this thing gets adjudicated, to the other contestants in that race. That includes another Democrat, by the way, and it includes the Republicans who are trying and vying for that seat as well. So this is the rules. If you believe that nobody is above the law, then neither is ABC. Nobody ultimately gets an advantage, but I would rather that ABC and all the other networks spend a little bit more time paying attention to being a little bit more neutral than they have been accustomed to.
Josh, are we really going to see that from The View? I mean, The View hosts being a little bit more neutral.
Probably not, but it is the law. I mean, this absolutely is the law. I mean, putting on my legal cap as a lawyer, I mean, Alex is totally right. I mean, the traditional actual networks, ABC, CBS, NBC, are held to a very different standard than, for instance, your online streaming company there. And if you don't like what the actual law is when it comes to the standards that we have in place, then your role as a concerned citizen is to lobby your lawmakers, or as the case may be here sometimes, your regulators, to actually change the law. But Brenton Carr, who is the chairman right now of the FCC, I've known Brendan Carr for some number of years now. He knows the law. He knows the rules, and he's looking to actually enforce the law and enforce the rules there. And kudos to him. But no, Gabriella, I do not expect the ladies of The View, to have on some young, ambitious Republican candidate from Texas or Kansas or whatever anytime soon. There, that would be quite a trip. But I don't want to say coming up.
No, Whoopi Goldberg, Joy, all of them. That would be interesting to watch, wouldn't it? Josh Hammer, Senior Editor at Large at Newsweek, and Alex Tarasio, Signal Principal and Pollster. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
I have a special message here for my American viewers. It may be a new year, but for people out there buried in debt, it hardly means a fresh start. Whether you're struggling with credit cards, personal loans, or medical bills, you'll want to hear about today's sponsor. PDS Debt has an A+ from the Better Business Bureau, nearly 5 stars on Trustpilot, and thousands of positive real-life reviews. PDS actually works to understand your unique financial situation and craft a personalised relief plan tailored to your needs. Don't let another month of interest pile up. Take back control in 30 seconds. Get your free personalised assessment and the best option for you at pdsdebt.com/power. That's pdsdebt.com/power. King Charles says that he will support police in their investigation into his brother Andrew Mountbatten Windsor and those links with Jeffrey Epstein. Joining us now is skynews.com.au columnist Louise Roberts. Louise, thank you so much for joining us.
Great to see you.
Wow, this is pretty extraordinary news, an extraordinary development that the King has, of course, been under pressure for some time now as the scandal has been getting worse and worse. We've been seeing the King getting heckled while carrying out public engagements. Talk to us about this move from the King and what this means.
Well, it is quite unprecedented, I think, Gabriella, because normally the King wouldn't address this issue directly. I mean, there's been moves behind the scene, obviously buoyed in by William and Catherine as well, to remove Andrew from his home on the royal estate and sort of really push him, strip him of his titles, his princehood, really push him out of public sight. But the fact that he said that they will, or Buckingham Palace has issued a statement saying they will support police if asked, which, that's great, they do that. But I guess the real question is, how was Andrew allegedly allowed to operate in this space anyway as a trade envoy? How have we got to a situation where emails are being investigation, where it looks like something untoward has happened? He's been releasing information and passing on emails. So I'm pleased that the palace will cooperate. I really don't think they have a choice in a way as well, because to your point about Charles being heckled in public, when a man is yelling at him, how long have you known about Andrew and Epstein? They cannot avoid it.
No.
It's absolutely radioactive, and every corner they turn to, they're being asked about it.
We have that statement from Buckingham Palace. A spokesperson said the King has made clear in words and through unprecedented actions his profound concern at allegations which continue to come to light in respect of Mr Mountbatten Windsor's conduct, while the specific claims in question are for Mr Mountbatten Windsor to address. If we are approached by Thames Valley Police, we stand ready to support them as you would expect. And Louise, to your point, these recent reports that Andrew Mountbatten Windsor leaked trade envoy reports, I mean, highly confidential information to Jeffrey Epstein. Now, this is allegedly from his official work as trade envoy in 2010 and 2011, and according to the material released in the latest Epstein files and seen by the BBC. Of course, Andrew has consistently denied any wrongdoing, but there must be so much anger.
There is a lot of anger. And look, I really think this is the smoking gun for Andrew. I've always suspected that any connection to his role as a trade envoy, which of course is a very senior position. He was appointed in 2001 with great fanfare. He was given the nickname Air Miles Andy, of course, because he was very keen on the luxuries and the status associated with that role. But the issue now is whether his official privilege extended to giving information to a convicted sex offender, because like one of the examples is that email his assistant sent him on November 30, 2010. Within 4 minutes, according to these documents, Andrew has forwarded that to Jeffrey Epstein while he's staying in Jeffrey Epstein's home in Manhattan. And the point is that in 2019, Andrew did an interview, that famous car crash interview with Newsnight, and he said he went to Epstein's home to end the relationship, end the friendship, where he's almost like a de facto staff member, sending on documents. And look, you know, if there's a link between impropriety on any part there, then he has to answer for it in my book.
Absolutely.
He has to answer for it, because it's one thing to have, you know, dodgy friendships, and, you know, he paid off Virginia Giuffre, we know that, and he's never really been held accountable for anything around that trade envoy role, and I think this is going to be a moment of reckoning for him.
I think you're right. We're also learning a bit more about how Andrew was kicked out of Royal Lodge. According to the Daily Mail, he was kicked out in the middle of the night. What more can you tell us about this?
Yeah, so unceremoniously, the cars turned up, everything was packed up, and he left much earlier than expected. There was a narrative, certainly over Christmas, wasn't it, that they wanted to keep him out of Sandringham for Christmas, and there was a narrative that he would be leaving Royal Lodge sometime in 2026, but look, it's early Feb and he's already gone. He's already been shoved to Sandringham, Marsh Farm. He's out of sight, out of mind, at least in a visible sense, unless he gets in his Range Rover and goes into the town. I don't know, but I mean, it's still not, he's not, you know, really slumming it. It's still a very luxurious environment he will be living in, but he's not royal adjacent, and that's what will really upset him, the fact that he can't be part of that scene anymore, because, you know, obviously if his mother had still been alive, he'd probably still be operating in that space.
Well, Prince William and Princess Catherine have broken their silence after this series of fresh bombshell revelations about Andrew from the newly released Epstein files. Prince William and Princess Catherine issued a 2-line statement saying, "I can confirm the Prince and Princess have been deeply concerned by the continuing revelations." This is coming from a spokesperson for the royal couple. Continued to say their thoughts remain focused on the victims. What did you make of that statement?
I thought it was great they mentioned the victims, because that's been missing in my book from a lot of the royal narrative. But you find, I think, with Catherine and William, they always go straight to the victim line, which is what people want to hear. They want to see some sympathy and empathy for people who were trafficked by Epstein or caught up in his terrible, toxic world. Interesting they don't mention Andrew by name, though. It's just sort of the talking around the issue. And they have to address it publicly because they're the next in line, the next king and queen.
Absolutely.
So, and they want this short off and not affecting their reign when they're actually at Buckingham Palace. So I think all power to them for actually mentioning it. Would not have been easy, but I do feel it's part of an ongoing strategy from William, communication strategy, to really position them as the new generation of monarchs as well, away from the bad old days where Andrew could run amok and basically do what he wanted.
Yeah, and those days are coming to an end.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Meghan Markle. She's been busy promoting her latest as ever product, that is chocolate, and she's featured, would you believe it, her husband Harry on Instagram trying it out. Let's take a look.
Hello.
Hello.
Ooh. Yes, please.
White chocolate.
Thank you.
You got it.
Love you.
What a surprise. I mean, are we shocked that Meghan's filming Harry trying out her latest product?
He's the king's son, and he's gone from royal duties to product demos. It's basically an infomercial in their luxury home, isn't it? I mean, what's next? As ever, steak knives maybe, I don't know. But clearly he's now been reduced to a bit part in her performance, which I'm very cynical about Meghan, as you know, but I suspect that's always been the plan, that she is the main event and he's like the backup dancer, in a way.
Of course.
Yeah.
No, you can see it every time. I think she's getting slammed for this. I've seen plenty of comments, a lot of people calling it cringe.
But
it's
cringe.
Yeah,
It's just,
no
it's
surprise
dreadful.
at all. Cringe from Harry too, I'm sorry. It's painful to watch. Finally, I want to get your thoughts on the Super Bowl.
Yes.
The
Hot new
halftime
romance.
show is dividing America. And yes, as you say, new romance. We've seen this new romance be made official. Kim Kardashian and Lewis Hamilton, they hard launched their relationship at the stadium, Louise.
Well, that was exciting, wasn't it, to see that? But Kim doesn't do subtle romance reveals, does she? There's always a strategy behind it. I mean, beautiful hair and makeup, photographed by her photographer before she actually entered the stadium, etc. Look, Lewis Hamilton is an established Formula One star. He knows the drill. He knows if he's going to be in a relationship with Kim, then it's going to be everywhere. Probably enjoying a bit of the notoriety, but he has been known, certainly in the UK when I lived there, as being fastidiously private about his love life. So it'll be a bit of a change of gear for him. They were seen together in the Cotswolds of a romantic weekend just a few days earlier. So see how this one plays out. They have been friends for about 12 years, I believe, and also Lewis was very pally with one of Kim's ex-husbands, Kanye, previously too. So I don't know where that friendship has landed, but yeah, in the celebrity world, it's probably it's the way they launch now, a hard launch at Super Bowl in front of what, 135 million people.
That's one way to hard launch a relationship, isn't it? Louise Roberts, thank you so much.
Good to see you.
And that is Power Hour. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you tomorrow. Make sure you subscribe to Sky News Australia on YouTube.